My dear ones, after so many years of life, I've learned many valuable lessons about family and relationships. Today, I want to share some of these experiences with you, hoping that you can learn from them and make your lives a little easier and happier. Don't blame your parents for your past. Oh, how easy it is to blame our parents for everything that went wrong in our lives. I remember when I was young, always complaining that my father was too strict or that my mother was overprotective. But you know what? Over time, I realized that they did the best they could with what they had and knew. You see, my father grew up during the Great Depression. He learned early on that money was scarce and that you had to work hard to survive. When I asked for a new toy, he often said no, and I would get furious. But now I understand that he was trying to teach me the value of money and hard work. My mother, on the other hand, lost a brother when she was a child. This made her extremely protective of me. I used to feel suffocated, but now I see that her behavior came from a place of love and fear of losing me. Accepting our parents' imperfections doesn't mean approving all their actions. It means understanding that they are human, with their own stories and struggles. When we can do this, we open up space for forgiveness and for taking responsibility for our own lives. I remember the day I finally talked to my father about how I felt about his strictness. It was a difficult conversation, but a necessary one. He told me about his childhood, the difficulties he faced, and I could see tears in his eyes. At that moment, I realized that he too carried his own wounds. This understanding helped me break the cycle of resentment I was perpetuating. So my young ones, don't spend your life blaming your parents. Try to understand their stories, accept their imperfections, and use these experiences to become better people. It's liberating to take control of your own story. Avoid speaking ill of your spouse. Well, this is advice I learned the hard way. When I was younger and newly married, I used to vent to my mother about all the little irritations in my marriage. I thought it was harmless, you know? But I soon realized I was creating a negative image of my partner for my family. Once at a family gathering, I noticed that my mother was treating my spouse coldly. That's when I realized the mistake I had made. By sharing only the negative aspects, I had painted an unfair picture of the person I loved. Respecting your partner, especially when they're not present, is crucial to building trust. Not just in your relationship, but in the entire family dynamic. Think about your children. What do they learn when they hear one parent criticizing the other? I remember an occasion when my oldest son came to ask me why his mother and I fought sometimes. It was a golden opportunity to teach about empathy and conflict resolution. I explained that even people who love each other can disagree sometimes, but what's important is how we resolve these differences with respect and love. So, the next time you're tempted to complain about your spouse to other people, stop and think, will this help our relationship? Is this teaching something positive to our kids? If the answer is no, it's better to keep it to yourself and talk directly to your partner. Don't compare your children to each other. This is a trap that many parents fall into, isn't it? I've done it myself, to my shame. I had two children, Jack and Emily. Jack was excellent at math, while Emily excelled in the arts. At first I used to say things like, "Emily, why can't you be good at math like your brother?" What a terrible mistake. I only realized how harmful this was when I saw the sparkle in Emily's eyes dim every time I made a comparison. That's when I understood. Each child is a unique universe. Valuing each child's individuality is essential. I remember the day Emily brought home a drawing she had made at school. Instead of comparing her to Jack, I praised her creativity and asked about her creative process. The smile I received in return was unforgettable. Comparisons can create unnecessary rivalries between siblings. I saw this happen with my own children until I changed my approach. I began to celebrate each one's individual achievements, regardless of what the other was doing. Over time, I noticed that Jack and Emily grew closer. They began to appreciate each other's skills instead of competing. Jack even asked Emily to teach him how to draw, while Emily asked Jack for help with her math homework. So, my dears, remember, each child is unique. Celebrate their differences, encourage their individual talents, and see how this strengthens family bonds. Don't focus only on the negative aspects of life. I confess that as we get older, it's easy to fall into the trap of complaining all the time. Back pain, bills to pay, bad news in the paper. But let me tell you a secret. Focusing only on the negative just makes life harder. I remember a time shortly after I retired when I was constantly in a bad mood. I complained about the weather, the food, everything. It was my 5-year-old granddaughter who taught me a valuable lesson. One day she asked me, "Grandpa, why don't you smile anymore?" That hit me like lightning. I realized I was missing precious moments by always focusing on what was wrong. So I decided to do a daily exercise. Find at least 3 things to be grateful for every day. At first it was difficult, but over time it became natural. I started noticing the birds singing in the morning, the taste of my coffee, the affection from my wife. This change in perspective transformed my life. Of course, old age brings challenges. There are days when the pains are stronger, when we feel lonely or frustrated. But cultivating gratitude and optimism, even in these difficult moments, can make all the difference. One technique I learned is to transform complaints into positive affirmations. Instead of saying, "I hate this back pain," I try to think, "I'm grateful I can still walk." It's not easy, but with practice it becomes a habit. So my dear ones, don't let negative aspects dominate your lives. Look for the good in each day, no matter how small. Life is too precious to be wasted on bitterness. Avoid excessive financial dependence on children. This is a delicate subject, isn't it? When we're young, we dream of giving everything to our children. But with age, I learned that giving everything isn't always the best form of love. I remember when my oldest son graduated from college. He came to ask me for money to buy a new car. At the time, I had savings and thought, why not? He deserves it. But this decision created a harmful pattern. Soon my son was coming to me for everything. Bills, trips, even to pay off his debts. I realized that unintentionally, I was preventing him from learning to manage his own finances. It was difficult, but I had to set boundaries. I explained that although I loved him, he needed to learn to support himself. At first there was resentment, but over time, he understood and even thanked me. Plan your financial independence. This doesn't mean you can't help your children occasionally, but avoid becoming their main source of financial support. This preserves not only your resources, but also mutual respect in the relationship. One strategy I adopted was to create a family emergency fund. I explained to my children that this money was reserved for true emergencies, not for luxuries or everyday expenses. This gave us security, but also kept clear the expectation that everyone should be responsible for their own finances. Remember, the best gift we can give our children is the ability to support themselves. This may mean saying no sometimes, but in the long run, they'll thank you. Moderate the sharing of health problems. Our health. The older we get, the more it seems to occupy our thoughts, doesn't it? But I learned that sharing every little health problem with our children isn't always the best idea. There was a time when I would call my daughter every time I felt a pain or discomfort. I thought I was keeping her informed, but in reality I was causing her unnecessary anxiety. One day she came to visit me with deep, dark circles under her eyes. When I asked what was wrong, she confessed that she wasn't sleeping well, worried about my health. It was a wake-up call for me. I realized I needed to find a balance. I decided to share only essential information about my health. For the small day-to-day complaints, I started writing in a journal. This helped me process my feelings without overburdening my children. Of course, there are times when we need our family's support. When I received a serious diagnosis, I shared it with my children, but I did it calmly and objectively, providing clear information and an action plan. This more moderate approach had a positive effect. My children became more relaxed in my presence, and our conversations became more varied and pleasant, instead of focusing only on my health problems. So, my dears, remember, your children care about you and want to know about your health, but protecting them from unnecessary worries is also a form of care. Encourage your children's independence. This might be the most difficult advice to follow, but it's incredibly important. When our children are small, we take care of every aspect of their lives. As they grow, it's natural to want to continue protecting them. However, I learned that true protection lies in preparing them to fly on their own. I clearly remember the day my youngest daughter, Sarah, told me she wanted to move to another country to study. My first instinct was to say no. I was terrified at the idea of her being so far away, facing an unknown world. But then, I remembered my own youth, the dreams I had and sometimes didn't pursue out of fear or family pressure. I didn't want Sarah to have the same regrets. I took a deep breath and said, "If that's what you want, let's see how we can make it possible." The smile on her face was worth every moment of anxiety I felt afterward. Respecting our children's life choices doesn't mean agreeing with everything. It means offering guidance when asked, but also trusting that we've raised capable adults who can make their own decisions. Sarah went abroad. There were difficult moments, of course, nights when she called crying from homesickness or frustrated with challenges. In those moments, the hardest thing was not to get on the first plane to solve everything for her. Instead, I offered attentive listening and words of encouragement. Over time, I saw Sarah flourish. She faced challenges, made friends, learned a new language, and grew in ways that might not have been possible if she had stayed. Our relationship also grew. She began to see me not just as a father, but as a confidant and friend. Encouraging our children's independence demonstrates trust in them and in their upbringing. This strengthens mutual respect and creates healthier relationships as we all age. Conclusion. My dear ones, after all these years, I understood that often silence is as important as the words we say. Choosing not to blame, not to criticize, not to compare. These silent choices can have a profound impact on our family relationships. Prioritizing family harmony doesn't mean avoiding all conflicts. It means approaching challenges with love, respect, and understanding. It means recognizing that each family member is a unique individual with their own journeys and struggles. Over the years, I've seen families fall apart due to unresolved resentments, unfair comparisons, and unrealistic expectations. But I've also seen families overcome the greatest challenges through love, open communication, and mutual respect. Remember, cultivating positive and lasting relationships is a daily work. It requires patience, forgiveness, both for others and for yourself, and a constant willingness to learn and grow. As I age, I realize more and more how precious these family ties are. They sustain us in difficult times and make joys even sweeter. For those of you who are still in the active phase of your careers, my advice is, start planning your financial independence as soon as possible. Save a part of your income regularly, even if it's little at first. Learn about investments and financial planning. And remember, retirement may seem distant, but it comes faster than we imagine. For those who, like me, are already retired and facing financial challenges, know that it's never too late to make positive changes. Be honest with your family about your situation. Look for ways to reduce expenses and, if possible, find ways to supplement your income. The goal is not to become rich in old age, but to maintain your dignity and respect in your family relationships. When we strive to be financially independent, to the extent possible, we preserve balance and mutual respect in our relationships with our children. Remember, my dear ones, that the true value of a father or mother to their children is not in the financial support they can offer, but in the love, wisdom, and memories they share. By striving to maintain our financial independence, we are actually strengthening these more important bonds. Moderate the sharing of health problems. Health. When we're young, we hardly think about it. But when we reach my age, it seems to become the main subject of our lives. And that's what I want to talk to you about now. I confess that I went through a phase where my health problems were practically the only subject of my conversations. Every phone call to my children started with a detailed report of all my pains, doctor's appointments, and medications. I thought I was just keeping them informed, but I didn't realize the impact it was having on them. It was my daughter-in-law, Sarah, who gently opened my eyes. One day, after a long conversation about my digestive problems, she kindly said to me, "Grandpa, we love knowing how you are, but sometimes we get very worried. Maybe we could talk about other things too." That was a shock to me, but also a necessary awakening. I realized that, unintentionally, I was overburdening my loved ones with constant worries. Every time I mentioned a new symptom or problem, I saw the concern grow in their eyes. They already had their own lives to manage, with work, children, and their own health concerns, and I was adding extra weight to all of that. From that day on, I decided to change my approach. Of course, I didn't stop sharing important information about my health, but I learned to dose this information. Instead of calling to report every little discomfort, I started talking about my health only when there was something significant to share. I discovered that it's possible to find a balance between keeping my children informed and not overburdening them with unnecessary worries. For example, when I was diagnosed with high blood pressure, I shared this information with them, explained the treatment the doctor had prescribed, and reassured them that I was following all medical recommendations. But for the small day-to-day things, a backache here, a sleepless night there, I learned to deal with them on my own or share with friends my age who were going through similar experiences. This not only relieved the burden on my children, but also helped me develop a support network among my peers. One strategy I adopted was to keep a health diary. In it, I note my symptoms, medications, and concerns. This helps me have a clearer view of my health and communicate more accurate information to my doctor. It also gives me a sense of control, reducing the need to share every detail with my children. Another thing I learned is the importance of focusing not just on health problems, but also on the positive things I'm doing to stay healthy. When I talk to my children, instead of just talking about my pains, I tell them about the new healthy recipe I tried or the walk I took in the park. This not only reassures them, but also encourages me to maintain healthier habits. Of course, there are times when we need our family's support for more serious health issues. In these cases, it's important to be clear and direct about our needs. But in day-to-day life, try to find a balance. Remember, my dear ones, that your children care deeply about you and want to know about your health, but they also want to enjoy your company, hear your stories, share happy moments. By moderating the sharing of health problems, you not only protect them from excessive worries, but also open up space for deeper and more meaningful connections. Encourage your children's independence. My dear ones, we've come to a topic that is particularly close to my heart: the importance of encouraging our children's independence. I confess that this was one of the hardest lessons I learned as a father, but also one of the most rewarding. When my children were little, I wanted to protect them from everything. Every decision they had to make, every obstacle they faced, I wanted to be there to solve it for them. I thought this was love, that I was taking care of them. But over time, I realized I was doing more harm than good. I clearly remember the day my oldest son, Jack, came to tell me he wanted to change his major in college. My first instinct was to say no. I had so many plans for him to follow the career I thought was best. But then, I remembered how my own father had insisted I pursue a career that didn't make me happy, and how that had affected our relationship. At that moment, I decided to do something different. Instead of trying to convince him to stay in the course I wanted, I sat down with him and listened. I heard his dreams, his concerns, his plans. And you know what? I realized that my son was no longer that little boy who needed me to make all the decisions for him. He was a young adult, capable of making his own choices. It was difficult, I won't lie. Part of me still wanted to protect him, to tell him exactly what to do, but instead I said to him, "Son, I trust you. I know you've thought a lot about this. Whatever your decision, I'll be here to support you." The smile on his face at that moment was worth more than anything. Conclusion. My dear ones, we've come to the end of our conversation, and I'd like to leave you with some final words for reflection. Throughout life, I've learned that silence can often be as powerful as words. There are moments when choosing not to speak, not to criticize, not to compare, can be the greatest act of love we can offer our family. Cultivating positive and lasting relationships requires effort, patience, and above all, love. This love manifests not only in kind words, but also in respect, trust, and the ability to give space for each family member to grow and develop in their own way. Always remember, our children, our spouses, our parents, they are all unique individuals with their own journeys, dreams, and challenges. Our role is to support them, love them unconditionally, and create a family environment where everyone feels safe to be who they truly are. As we age, we have the wonderful opportunity to look back and reflect on our experiences, learning from our mistakes and celebrating our achievements. But we also have the chance to look forward, to continue growing, learning, and strengthening the bonds that unite us with those we love. Family harmony doesn't happen by chance. It's something we build day by day, with small gestures of love, words of encouragement, silent hugs, and yes, sometimes with the wise silence we choose instead of words that could hurt. So, my dear ones, as we continue on this journey of life, let's strive to create homes filled with love, understanding, and mutual respect. Let's be kind to one another, patient with our own faults and those of others, and always grateful for the precious gift that is family. May we be beacons of love and wisdom for the generations that follow us, showing through our actions and choices the transformative power of family love. And remember, no matter how old we are, we still have much to learn, much to give, and much love to share. May we continue to grow together, support one another, and create precious memories that will last for generations. With all my love and gratitude for having listened to me, Grandpa Joe.